And we'll call to order instead of adjourn. Good morning. The Finance Committee meeting is called to order at Wednesday, September 20th at 10:31 a.m. We have to my left Alderwoman O'Neill, who is present. Unfortunately, due to personal reasons, Alderwoman Finlayson cannot make it. She is on a plane. At this time, I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with one amendment to add our 5323 pay raise classification.
Okay, and due to absence of Alderwoman Finlayson, I can second that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Next on the agenda is the approval of the September 7th, 2023 meeting minutes.
I move to approve 9/7/23 special meeting minutes.
I'll second that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Kaylin. All right, and next we have supplemental appropriation 5-24, the grant, planning and zoning. I think it might be best if I may ask the Director of Finance just to give an introduction on why we're looking at this.
Yes, this supplemental appropriation was brought to your agenda at the previous meeting.
Yep.
Asked for additional funding to expend monies for a grant for some planning and zoning training.
Right, and we didn't have a representative.
Yeah,
so we just-
you wanted more information on what the money was going to be used
Yeah,
for.
even though it's a small amount, we just didn't want to set a precedence of just, rubber stamping things.
Which I think is fine.
Okay, we have in our presence John Tower, who's our Chief of Historic Preservation. Would you like to introduce yourself and speak to it?
I'm John Tower, Chief of Historic Preservation, and I am speaking about the CLG grant, which is proposed for $1,500, and CLG stands for Certified Local Government. So what the money is typically used for, and this is a fairly standard amount for us in preservation, it's used for continuing education of commissioners so that we meet the minimum standard of continuing education for maintaining the commissioner's level of, let's say, how should I put this, familiarity with government practices and best practices in preservation.
Great.
Is it specific to the Annapolis City Code, or is it general?
It is a requirement of the certified local governments, of which the our historic district commission is one.
Okay. All right, at this time, I'll accept a motion, I believe.
Motion to approve SA 524.
Favorable.
Oh, sorry. Recommend favorably SA 524 to the council.
I'll second that motion. All in favor for favorable recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, I should mention this, though, and I didn't. This is in concert with the Maryland Historic Trust.
Right.
CLG isn't on its own. It's really just a sort of function of Maryland Historic Trust.
Right.
So we remain in good standing with Maryland Historic Trust.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks.
Thanks for coming all the way down today.
Yeah.
I shouldn't even have plugged in.
All right. Okay, next we have some legislation. The first being O23-23. It is some alcoholic beverage code technical corrections. I spoke to the sponsor last night. He is working, so Cynthia Ruder was kind enough to say that she could speak to it. I'm not sure what the genesis of the corrections were, other than, you know, as I say, clean up on aisle 3. But so, Cynthia, would you mind giving us a synopsis of what happens here?
Sure. Cynthia Reuter, Legislative and Policy Analyst for the City Office of Law. So, coming up in your agenda, you have a fee increase for the art establishment liquor license. It sets the fee for that. While we were getting that ready, Deputy City Clerk Cindy Gaines discovered that we had some problems in the alcohol and beverage section of the code. Things were over many years. Things were added in one place and they weren't added in the other place, and the sections weren't the way they should have been. So Office of Law got to work, we fixed it, and this legislation is the result of that.
Great.
Great. So for clarity, it does not, because anytime you touch, you know, the liquor code, it creates some anxiety out there, especially with the restaurants. It does not change any fees or any substantial.
It does not change fees, it does not change licenses, it just makes sure that the licenses are mentioned in every place in the code that they need to be mentioned.
Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a little shorter too. Any questions?
No, I do not have any questions.
All right, at this time, I'll accept a motion for a favorable recommendation of ordinance O23-23.
I move to provide a favorable recommendation, O2323, to the council.
Okay, I believe it will be looked at by Economic Matters and obviously the Alcohol Beverage Control Board. Great. Okay, next one, it's pretty important.
Are you going to close the vote on
Oh, did we not vote? Okay, second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. I know, I'm two people. All right, the next one is O24-23, which is our yearly issuance of general obligation bonds and bond anticipation notes. Director Dickinson is here, probably best to explain the substitute bill and the genesis of that, if you will.
Okay, so the original bill that was, the original ordinance that was posted online had some issues with the way it was constructed. So instead of trying to correct the various sections within all of that verbiage, we just did a full amendment to take out what was there and substitute a full bill. The template used for the original version had some information in it from a previous bond ordinance that wasn't needed in this case. That's the reason for the amendment. And if you take that amended bill and the two exhibits that are part of the ordinance, you will see that we're asking for authority to issue debt for our ongoing capital projects, and the ordinance sets a maximum amount equal to the debt we would need to complete all of our capital projects within the next year. And that never happens. They don't move as quickly as we're going to, as we would hope to, and they don't follow the timing that is in the capital budget. So we will issue, if we issue debt, we will issue a number that is somewhat lower than what you see we're asking authority for.
Is there a correlation, a numerical correlation between Exhibit 1 and Exhibit 2
So, yes, hold on.
and 3?
Exhibit 1 is a list of all of our ongoing projects. And if you went down through the capital program, the capital budget in the book, you'd see that this represents one line for every capital project that's in that book. And the amounts, the total budget, and the funding sources would reconcile to that capital budget book.
Which is the same we approved in the budget.
Yes, and then, you know, we calculate what we still need to issue on debt for the ongoing projects, and then that total is $67 million, but we have idle bond proceeds from our December issue not used yet, which we will apply first before we try to issue any more debt.
Otherwise known as the carryover, for lack of a
Yeah,
better
like
word.
it's a bond pool. We issue the proceeds, we put them in a pool, and then we apply them to projects as they spend. And so we don't want to issue new debt until we've used up the proceeds from the previous issue. And the most that we would need if everything moved forward would be the $26.6 million. Now on Exhibit 2, I can get that. So I would say the numbers don't correlate here. What you're looking at there is a list of our past bond issues and the amount that's outstanding on those issues as of June 30, 2023. And the bond ordinance also asked for the permission to refund any of this debt if the interest rates were favorable, and we thought a refunding would result in savings for the city. I don't foresee that's going to happen because of the climbing interest rates now, and most of our debt has been refunded and reissued at lower rates. Our oldest issue is now 2013, as you see there. So we have refunded all of the earlier issues to lower interest rates. So although I don't foresee needing this authority, we put it in there as a standard in case some opportunity would arise that we could refund some of those. And even the first issue that you see there, the TIF issue, the county portion of the tax increment Park Place issue, that was paid off on July 1st.
That is
So
what?
that's no longer.
I'm sorry, it's
It's paid off.
Right.
The county had enough excess tax dollars to pay off the whole issue early. And that was, July 1st, that was completely paid off, so that's no longer outstanding either.
Does that affect the parking component of Park Place?
No. This debt was
the
issued
initial- Yeah,
and paid off by county tax dollars. And it would only run through our books in that we would recognize the debt expense and offsetting revenue from these tax revenues to pay it. We do record it in our financial statements, but it has no impact on any of the operations, nor debt service it's not debt service we would have to pay out of the parking revenues.
okay, and just two more comments. Did we need to re-advertise in the Capitol? Or did we advertise this in the Capitol, in the paper?
Yes.
And then I just wanted to say that the FAC did give it a unanimous
Yes.
favorable recommendation
Yes,
at
they
their
did.
last meeting. Any questions, Alderman O'Neill?
No. I'm good.
Okay, at this time, I'll accept a motion for a favorable recommendation of O24-23.
I move to give a favorable recommendation, O2423, to the council.
I will second that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. I think we're going to get another, well, I don't know, another interest rate decision today, I understand from the guy at top.
Yeah, I know that the Fed was meeting, they were gonna talk about raising interest rates. I also heard that there's not much expectation that they will.
That they will.
This time?
Yeah, I heard that too. All right. The next item on the agenda is, hold on a second, I just went to Housing and Human Welfare. Here we go. Is the fee, is an annual fee for R38-23. This is for the art establishment liquor license fee. Keyword here is annual. The companion ordinance defines or establishes a license for performing arts specific to, well, the origination of this was Maryland Hall, for example. There may be others, but when you have every weekend, wine at a performance, it gets costly to do the C classification license, I believe it is. Anyway, so this just makes it yearly. And this, it's important to note that this was enabled by the state legislature, this past assembly, House Bill 352. So there is a little bit of a finance implication. Logically, this would probably reduce, I'm reading your fiscal impact note, Director Dickinson, but
Can I ask, is this 38, did you say?
I hope so. R38-23, the resolution.
I'm trying to get the fiscal note up.
I do have a question.
So do you want me to comment on the fiscal impact?
Yeah, if you may, sure, yeah. It's sort of unknown how, well, I don't know. It's, the revenue will be reduced a little bit instead of these.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
the way they
obviously.
have it structured and the fee levels that was discussed will lower the amount of permit revenue we get from that source.
Yeah,
And they're giving them a standard fee that'll carry them across the year, and it does not, they pay more than that for individual events.
Alderwoman O'Neill.
So my question would be, Maryland Hall is a for example, and what would other, let's say we throw in Pecka Gardens, who does different types of events, but similar. But they do some specific art events. The Maritime Museum does specific art events. They also rent it out for other social events, but do we get into muddy water by having a flat fee? I guess my question is, in it, is there room for somebody such as HAF or the Maritime Museum to come in and say, well, we want this same?
I think, may I answer?
Yes.
On page 2 of 2 of, what am I looking at here?
You're looking at the ordinance.
Yeah. It defines that it really, they have to meet criteria. It's, where does it say that? Is it in the staff report?
I can explain it if you'd
Oh, there it
like.
is. Sorry, it's in the state bill, right? Exhibit.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. It's in the House bill. which we reference, correct?
So the state legislature passed a law in the last session to allow Annapolis to have an art establishment liquor license. The law has a set criteria for businesses that are able to get that license. Our ordinance mirrors the state requirements. Those requirements are kind of strict, and not every nonprofit who has art events are able to meet the criteria. We don't know which ones will be able to do it yet, but it is going to be limited.
Yeah, and that's where I was referring to the 2 of 2. If I can read it, it says the board may issue the license to a nonprofit organization primarily engaged in the display, sale, or demonstration of art by an individual artist or a group of artists, the instruction of participating clients in creating art, or 3 live performances, including musical acts or theater performances. And then it says the board may not issue the license to an organization that displays and sells commercially prepared or mass-produced artistic products or has a corporate purpose that is not dedicated to the activities described under paragraph 1 of this subsection.
Okay,
But, I mean, they could have,
right. So for instance, Art Farm would fall under this. And I'm referencing them because they just opened up a new space within their space, within the same building.
would they want one?
Could they want one?
I thought it was more like a classroom structure. But yeah, I mean, the answer is if they meet this criteria, they can.
So the $1,000 fee basically covers 13 individual licenses in 365 days. So take 1,000, divide it by 75. That's 13. Maryland Hall, I'm guessing, probably has closer to 80, right? 3 times 45.
45 weekends.
Yeah,
Yeah,
something to that effect.
yeah.
So there's not a lot of organizations that do apply, but there's possibly a link.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just,
Yeah, no.
there
I
is a
mean,
little bit of a loophole in there. Because when it talks about, when the House bill talks about live performances, musical acts, and theater performances, is an open mic night count?
Might I assist?
Sure.
Mike Lyles, City Attorney, Office of Law.
Sorry.
It doesn't matter.
What's that?
It doesn't matter because the state has passed the bill and we're required to put the bill in our code. So are there unintended consequences with everything you pass? Sure there are. But it's not our consideration at this point because the state has mandated that we do this. Maryland Hall lobbied for it, they got it, and it is what it is.
Okay.
But the nonprofit aspect is the linchpin. So if you got a profit-making enterprise that may be one of the subjects of your comment, that wouldn't count.
Okay.
Our art activity, performance, or other types of art display must be primary activity.
Okay.
And so thirdly, the Alcohol Beverage Control Board oversees this anyway, so that institutions, establishments must adhere to the language, and the board is the ultimate determinant of that.
Are you okay?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that.
Could I just ask a legal syntax issue, I guess, with this page 2 of the House bill? When they say the board may issue the license to a nonprofit organization engaged in, and then it continues with 1, 2, 3 criteria, do they have to meet all of that criteria? It's not an either or, right?
Yes.
Okay, just want to make sure. Okay. Alrighty then, the fee. The fee itself is stated on, well, here it is, 1,000.
And might I add, this is the only thing that's before you. The ordinance was passed. So the only thing that's before you today is the fee.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah, the fee for such a license is proposed at $1,000. And that's from the state, so we don't have any choice. The fee, or is that our fee?
You could set a lower fee. It just can't be higher than 1,000.
I certainly wouldn't set a lower fee.
What's that?
We're already losing possibly $3,000 to $4,000, so we wouldn't set a lower fee. We just can't go higher. Okay.
We just can't go higher. Wow. Okay. Okay. Well, I guess I'll ask for a motion.
I'll give a favorable recommendation for R 3823 to go to council.
I'll second that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lyles, for explaining that. And next we have, and I think it's another fee. This is R 51-23, which again is just the fee coming to the Finance Committee. It is the fine for violating Annapolis noise restrictions. It has companion legislation under separate cover, but this is for the purpose of increasing the fine for repeat violations of the City of Annapolis noise restrictions and generally dealing with public peace and order section of the city code. And the fee proposed is $100 for the initial offense, and for repeat or continuous violation, it's $200.
So I just have a clarification question on that.
Sure, yeah.
So if I'm an offender and it's 11:02 p.m., which is after the time, correct? Isn't it currently 11 p.m. on,
Oh, you mean as far as playing
the peace
music?
order? And it's 11:02 and a second call comes in at 12:10 because I'm continued to play. Does that cover 2 days?
Limit say
Or is
again?
it one offense?
How many times is it called? Were you saying twice or?
Like if today I call at 11:02 and tomorrow morning at 12:15 I call, is that per day, per offense? Is there clarification on that? Or is the 200, is the repeat offense the second time in that day? I'm just asking.
Well, in reality, I doubt that they would come that quickly again. Sorry. No, I shouldn't be joking. Is it, you know, the fine is when they actually are approached by public official. And yeah, if they're approached twice, regardless of the time that you're suggesting, I would say the second, that the repeat fine would apply.
Okay, so I'm asking, the fine for initial, well, this says office, it should be offense. So I guess I need to make an amendment to change the
Oh,
wording
yeah,
on
good
that.
catch. Yeah, there's a little typo there.
But it's $100 per day, and what does that exactly entail? Is that something, Ms. Reuter, you can,
So the first offense is per day, but then the second column, the $200, that's for repeat and continuous violations. So every time, I'm not sure about this, but the way that's meant to be is that every time an officer has to go back, then it's a repeat or continuous offense.
okay. So the $100 per day, and I know that's splitting hairs, but what exactly does the per day mean? Because if I have an offense today and you're coming back tomorrow, that's a repeat offense.
That is how that section, those fines are typically written, and I
Okay.
cannot give you a
Reason
legal
why.
answer on that.
Okay.
Can I?
Yes, yes. Director
I
Dickinson.
had another question as well, like if they went out in the morning and the noise was going on and they went back later in the afternoon, would only be $100 when you had to send somebody back out. The per day is an issue because it doesn't define it by visit. How many times does it have to be corrected in the same day? So I was just gonna point out another way that this is a little confusing as to what the fee would be.
Yeah, I'm looking at the code right now and seeing, I know we're just looking at the fee, but if there's any language on addressing those concerns. Let me see in the introduction. Does the code, I don't want to stump you, Cynthia, but just the Code of Maryland Regulations?
Might I be able to help?
Yes, sir.
What is your question?
My question is, fine for initial offense is
$100
$100 per day.
$100. It says per day, but the per day allows that every day that the violation occurs, they can continue to get fined. The issue with the particular terminology that we've been trying to correct over time in the code is that it was written poorly and unclearly. We have not changed that because the council seems reluctant to change things in the code.
They are?
We would like to change it. If you could suggest wording that is more clear to you, we'd be happy to approach that change and bring it before the council at some future date. But basically, there's a noise violation. The noise violations can occur in any number of instances. There's a particular incident. There's a noise violation. It's a $100 ticket. The incident continues into the next period, the next hour, the next complaint. It could go up to $200. If, for instance, the violation continues and goes unabated, if it's a continuous noise that over time it doesn't get ameliorated, the fine could be $100 per day. For instance, we had a situation with an air processor in the city of Annapolis, and it hummed all day and would not be a repeat violation because it's a consistent hum that disturbs the peace of the community. And it was so loud that the neighbors complained. So the enforcement team goes out, they give a ticket of $100, hoping that it would be corrected. It would not be a repeat violation because the humming is sustained. But the city could approach the ticketing as long as it's sustained, it's $100 per day, not a new violation at that point, because it's not it's not a new complaint. The next complaint, if it stopped and it came back, then that would be a new complaint, and then it would be a $200, and the $200 would be $200 per day if the humming was consistent over a period of time. So it really is on the enforcement team to determine whether or not this is an instant or there's a continuous noise issue.
But this says right here, fine for repeat or continuous violation. It's now 200.
Right,
So if it's continuing,
and so you get the one complaint, it's $100, it hums, they come out, give a $100 ticket, it stops for weeks. But then it continues again and it goes unabated, sustained. The violation would be $200, and it would be $200 every day as long as the humming continued. So it takes into account, the wording, as an artful as it is, takes into account both situations. instances and continuing noise violation over a period of time. But
So
each complaint,
written on this ordinance where it's the fine for repeat or continuous violations, should that also say 200 per day?
if you wanted to say 200 a day, we will make it whatever is clear to you and the public. I think that implicit in the violation is the daily assessment. We do other fines and we enforce other fines that don't have that language on a per day basis. The fact that the per day is in there is the confusion, only because it's redundant. It's not necessary, because technically a continuous is a repeat violation, right? So it's really not necessary, and it's really making it unclear. My suggestion would be to remove it. Remove that language from the code in that description of fines, because it's not necessary.
I think there's an attempt to correct it in the code. I'm sorry. If you read the legislation, it's very clear well, let me just read it. Sorry, Vicki. This is under Title 11, Public Peace, Morals, and Welfare. Noise. Violations of the city noise ordinance shall be subject to enforcement, blah, 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 or the designation. The enforcement is not required to issue a warning. Each subsequent offense by the same individual, group, or property owner shall be cited at the next highest fine. That doesn't really coincide with the respective resolution. That's very clear to me, regardless of day, right? Isn't that what it's saying? Each subsequent offense. So our resolution table should just say, get rid of the, like you suggested, just get rid of the day thing.
I think what I heard, I'm sorry.
No, please.
I think what I
introduce yourself.
heard in Alderwoman O'Neill's question was the question of what is a reasonable period of time to cure the situation? Because I think part of what I heard you asking was, let's say, for the sake of argument, that something's going on and you end up with a whole series of neighbors who call 5 minutes apart, right? Do all of those count as separate complaints, right? At what point do you expect the city's aware, we've issued a citation, you have a certain period to cure the situation, and if we get other complaints during that cure period, it's all part of the same thing as far as the city's concerned. But at some point, the expectation is that you resolved the situation. And if we get a call again, then as far as we're concerned, you didn't cure in the appropriate period and you've got another violation. I don't know if that helps clarify, because it seems to me the question of the daily question, because your question really was, does a day mean 24 hours? Because if your first one was at 11:50 and your next one was at 12:05, is that 2 days? Is that 1 day? But I think that idea of how long does someone have to resolve the complaint that was received, the citation that was received, that might help you think about the time period maybe in a slightly different way in terms of what your intent is. I don't know if that helps, but I thought I would raise it.
It does, and I think what would be helpful is if we could amend the resolution to say fine for initial offense, $100, repeat or continuous, $200. That opens it up a little bit to that timing issue, but it also addresses, it says fine for repeat or continuous, so it a little bit counters what Mr. Lyles said in that if it's a humming noise that's going on for several days, it's $100 per day. But this makes it change if they don't fix that the next time a complaint is logged becomes a second offense, right? So if we remove the per day, would help clear up confusion over when the second offense could or would occur. Yes? I think.
Madam Councilperson, you can amend it to whatever you want it to be.
Yeah,
If it's clearer to you and the public is the most important. My suggestion would be to amend it, to clarify it, because the per day, as listed currently in the code, is confusing and redundant with the fact that you have already a column called continuous and repeat. The per day is redundant language. It's not necessary.
I couldn't find it in the code. Is it in the code per day with your revision, Cynthia?
It is in the fine schedule, which is, if you're in the code, you go to the bottom, it's, and click on appendices, it'll pop up then.
Okay, so, yeah, the reality of the situation is not conducive to I understand, Deputy Director, Burkhart's comment, but no, I mean, people want immediate response. With due respect, they want immediate response. So let's just simplify this. We could do it here, and I would.
So could we favorably recommend with the amendment
Yeah.
of removing per day?
Get rid of per day. And
Would you also like the amendment to include changing office to offense?
Yes, please.
say again?
And change.
Oh,
this
yes,
word
yeah, the
office to-
typo, right.
So can that be one amendment?
Can we put that in?
Yes. So
Yeah.
I make a motion for favorable recommendation to the council for resolution 5123 as amended.
And I second that motion as amended. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Did you get that, Caitlin? All righty.
Thank you,
Thanks.
all of you.
We like to simplify. Okay, next up, R 53-23 is fiscal year 20, thank you for being here, 2024. Yeah, position classification and pay plan update. And this is updating the position classification to reflect two things, which was the MIT name change that we did approve, I believe, in the budget amendment. I believe we did. Yeah. And then the next one is changing the deputy director in OEM from an A14 to A17 and specifying an effective date. So why do we have attached, okay, sorry, there's confusion here on the R.
So it's via resolution, and the way to bring changes to our titles and grades is to provide you with the position summary that makes those edits. And you're absolutely well-spoken in what two resources bring to bear here. The appropriate way to make the name change to the positions affected by the MIT to OITS division titling is to put it in the position summary. So that's why you have those classification or those titles adjusted that way. We do have a citywide class and comp study going on. There's only been an initial report made an encouragement because our pay rules currently with the city do impact the ability to provide a person a promotional increase. It requires a legislative change first before we can kind of set the date and keep it going. The importance of making the staff report come to light here in this regard is that the class and comp study is not done. They are embarked in a major initiative here. They are looking at our pay scale. They're looking at our pay rules as well, because We want best practices throughout everything here, including equity lens, et cetera. We are in the midst of all of that gathering of data. We're not at the stage of evaluating. So unfortunately, we don't have anything in place that will allow us to provide reclassification increase to the incumbent until there's the impact of this legislation has been completed. The way our pay rules work now is the incumbent would, upon completion or acceptance of this legislation, be able to be reclassified. The grade change would occur, and we would give that individual 5% or the next step closest to, but not less than 5%, which is the way the payroll works. And that's a 6.1% increase because we have defined steps. And so we will implement all of the payrolls as they are currently. And then when we get to that stage in the classification and compensation stage where we're actually making changes to our regulations, et cetera, then we'll be able to address whatever is the outcome that may also impact this position. We just don't know the results yet.
Yes, yeah.
A quick question about that. So this one is very specific to changing the names of the MIT to ITS, but then very specific to one department's deputy director. Will we receive a resolution for each pay change that comes about as the study continues? Or will they all be, the rest of them all be under one specific resolution?
So actually, I meet with the consultants weekly. We meet this afternoon as well. They have a whole team that's embarked on the compensation component, which they are actively gathering information from comparator jurisdictions. I have a sheet here that describes the whole process that I'd like to give you, and also through Caitlin, share that with all the other members of council. The idea being that we have done the initial piece, which is they've met with the directors and the second level positions in city government and gathered concerns and issues, as well as to refine and adjust job descriptions as needed. They have mile markers around revealing certain elements of that. They have identified that in this document here. And, I'm managing a citywide class and comp study to keep us on track and keep this moving so that ultimately we're ready for a number of things. We're ready for the budget, certainly, but we're also ready for collective bargaining, and we're able to make those appropriate changes that would ultimately be recommended and finally decided by city leadership as to what that looks like and how to come before you.
Okay, so this is the first, and perhaps in their study in 2 more weeks, there might be another.
I don't think in 2 more weeks
Okay,
that's
well,
going to happen.
I'm just trying to, are we going to be continuing to get these for very specific departments, or?
No, the next phase, we hope to be more comprehensive.
Okay,
Because, again, one of the charges in this was to really look at our pay structure, which is our pay scales and our pay roles. Necessarily, you want those things to work together.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
I'm going to be bad cop here.
Sure.
What was the basis for isolating this specific position? And by doing so, does that set a precedent that we can do it for any other position in the future?
For this particular position, I had already completed a study
Okay.
and had made an internal recommendation, as you're probably aware. And that did not go forward.
Okay. So it wasn't just,
No. And so what I have been doing with the consultants is sharing with them works in progress. This particular one had gotten to this stage.
okay. So the staff report I'm looking at, prepared by Mike Malinoff, it said I think it reads, based on the work done so far, the consultants are recommending a grade adjustment to this position to A17 under existing pay rules to prevent further delay. So that is what you speak to.
Yes.
Under existing pay rules. But then it seems like it may negate it by saying it is important, there's sort of like a disclaimer in the next paragraph. It is important to note that this legislation allows for an immediate grade reallocation. It does not preclude further changes that may come as the consultants complete additional phases of the study, which indicates pay scale recommendations after completion of benchmarking, pay rule recommendations, blah, blah, blah. So what does that mean about precluding, define further changes? I mean, could it?
It means that they're doing a comprehensive classification compensation study
Correct.
to look at both external market assessment as well as internal comparisons. And so by suggesting that this one not wait, it was more a concern about the impact on the incumbent and not delaying that. And also to let you know that they don't know yet what the full recommendations are going to be because they have the compensation and pay component of this being addressed comprehensively, and we don't know. It might have another impact, it may not.
In the course of this study, what's to prevent them from saying, can they negate that? Can they say, oh, wait a minute, why do we do that? We should go back to A16. I'm being extremely hypothetical here. Do you know what I'm asking?
I don't have an answer for what they would recommend, where I can only tell you that
So does this lock it in? Does this resolution lock it in, that pay scale?
this resolution will, in our current pay structure, both by our pay scale design and by our pay rules, allow this individual to receive an upgrade to A17.
Go ahead. Sorry, Deputy Director.
Hi, Vicki Buckland, Assistant City Manager. Part of the reason that second paragraph is written that way is to make clear that this resolution doesn't remove this position from the rest of the class and comp study. So the idea is not, here we're doing this one thing and then any other changes that might come out of that class and comp study would apply to everybody else, but wouldn't apply to this position. And that's not the case. That position is still part of the wider group, various recommendations that study might come out with would apply across all positions, including this one. And so I think in some ways that second paragraph is more there as a way to point out that position, it's not, you're doing this one thing and then they're not going to get any other, they're being removed somehow from everything else. And that's not the case. It's still in the mix. So those changes would apply to that position, which we don't know what they are yet, right? But that was really, I think, the intent there was some reassurance that somehow that particular position isn't getting taken out of the study.
It's not being taken out of the study. You've just established, for lack of a better word, the revised benchmark for it, using my construction words. Okay.
The initial part of the study, the initial part of the study, as you may remember, was to talk to the directors and the second level positions, because it was to honor some of the conversation around this and the expectation around this that was coming from various sources. But what they clearly are doing in the benchmarking and in the pay data collection is every one of those positions that were part of the initial review at the deputy and the second level are in it. And so that's why I have to say that we're not done, because that is a part of the data collection and will be part of the analysis, will be part of whatever might ultimately be a recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you.
At this time, thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Can I give you the?
Yes, please.
Sure, yeah. When is the estimated completion of the reclassification? Oh, it's on there. Oh, hello. Okay. So with that, though, I will accept a motion for a favorable recommendation of R 53-23.
I move to give a favorable recommendation to the council for R 5323.
Oh, wait, why is R 52-23 attached for Vogel? That might be, that must be a mistake. What are we doing to him? Okay. I'll second that motion. Maybe I should just read it to make sure it doesn't include Burr Vogel.
It does not.
It does not. I'll second that. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank
very
you so much.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. Okay, and last but not least, we are done with legislation. We have an update, a finance department update. Director Dickinson.
Yes, Jody Dickinson, Finance Director. Don't have a lot to add from what I had from the last Finance Committee meeting. We're still working on closing. We did the hard close of our system, and now we're working on pulling financial statements together. There's a lot of steps involved in that, and a lot of our staff are involved. And besides that,
I'm sorry, in closing, what? The last budget, or is that what you're saying?
we physically closed the fiscal year 23 year out in the accounting system.
The state closed theirs out yesterday.
So,
I'm teasing.
Yeah,
I read that, yeah.
I mean, it usually takes a few weeks past the end of the year to get that done. And then we can continue to make adjustments to it if we find adjustments, but we try to get most of it in by that date, close out the system, and then we can start pulling together financial statements.
Do you have any concerns on the bond issuance? Just, well, you spoke to that earlier, I guess, with the inflation, and is there any exposure there to help?
If we decide to sell debt, it'll probably be sometime in November, December. Right now, I'm not anticipating it because we have a lot of proceeds from other issues there to use. If we wait till the spring, whenever we do it, it'll be a higher interest rate than we've had in the past a couple years because of the rising interest rates. The interest rate for tax-exempt debt is usually lower than regular bonds, but still it'll be an increase for us.
We might have asked this last time, but just because it's important, with the increase in the hotel tax enabled by the county, do you have a person assigned to that? Your concern is that, I know you realize the importance of that revenue coming in, but do you have someone specifically assigned to it, or?
So, as I answered last time, yes and no. There's somebody who takes care of that
Yeah.
revenue flow, but it's not enough dedicated time to do what we need to do to follow up on any rentals that aren't collecting and paying. There's a lot of elements to it. We had an increase in the rate. We had to implement that. And we've been working with VRBO to see if they can get the collections for the city to the city. Things like that come up that we have to pursue, that one person on the staff doesn't have enough time to dedicate to it. So when I hire my senior accountant, that's one of their main goals is going to be taking care of receivables, and that's one of the main revenue flows they're going to be responsible for.
I'm outside the the finance framework here, but I read in the paper this morning, there's an RFP about someone studying our space allocation, and looking within the city of Annapolis for space. Is the lack of space preventing you from hiring?
Yes.
That is so ridiculous.
I mean, that's what I have to do. Now I have to decide if I'm gonna hire somebody now, I physically have to move out of my office, split that into workspaces so that people can move in there, so that I can move to a different space. So, you know, just like,
Yeah.
we're already in these small cubicles, so it's really difficult to find a spot for somebody to sit unless I try to find space for part of my team in another building. I already have the purchasing staff across the street, and unless I try to move somebody off-site, there's no place to put them. So we've talked about different options with the space we have to be able to hire somebody.
Yeah.
And I do want to start the process of hiring, so, you know, if we find the person and we get them on board, we'll figure something out. Any new space that we move into is going to be a while before we can get into that space. As you know, that process takes time, so.
So it's not preventing you from hiring. You would find somebody and then get them in here somewhere.
Somewhere,
Well,
sitting at a desk somewhere.
yeah. I have not talked to my colleagues about this, but, and I, you know, the assistant city manager is here. I don't understand why we wouldn't look at the city council office as sort of a swing space for the city council members, because we usually just go in there to, correct me if I'm wrong, we usually go in there just to use the computer and stuff. That could be something there temporarily, at least, that's all. I can't
No,
offer that.
we've
I
talked
can't
about
offer
that, but I
just-
think Vicki can be more helpful with
Yeah.
that option and
Do you
what
know
they're.
I'm saying? Yeah, I mean, it's in the interest of your hiring versus someone having, those seats are empty.
I think that the upstairs also needs space as well, so that may be part of the issue.
The city had undertaken a general space study, and so that RFP that you mentioned, or request for expression of interest, that information will end up being part of that process to inform it. And that process did take a look at the overall space utilization in the buildings that the city uses now. And so your question is an apt one. That was certainly part of just kind of scoping, what does the city have now? The particular solution obviously is something that will end up coming out of that longer term effort. To some extent, some of those kinds of things are a little bit of robbing Peter to pay Paul. So we're trying to, I think, make the best of what we have while planning for that long-term need.
There's a building across the street.
Yeah, the building across
Let's
the
buy that.
street, yeah. Anyway, so, and every available space is in that study, that, you know, maybe even Stanton Center or whatever, yeah, okay. I'm out of my league here, I just don't want the lack of space to prevent your position from being hired, which is very instrumental in revenue for a
So
city.
I don't know if the point you were making is, what do we do in the short term? Is that council space available in the short term?
Yeah,
I raised that issue, but I don't, the city manager didn't think that was the best option to go with right now. There's space across the street, but that building's not
yeah,
the Burgess House.
Yeah.
Is not you know, it's not formed for office space. It's more open space.
yeah. And the law office has so much space. Just checking.
Well, comparatively, yes, but it still doesn't mean they have enough space.
Those books would have to go somewhere for sure. All right. Is there anything else you'd like to add? Or Vicki, is there any update financially? Any numbers from the Hillman Garage coming in?
So you asked about that at the last meeting, and
Yeah.
I reached out to our representative at AMRP and asked if they could try to give us some kind of projection of where they're at right now, and he said he could pull that together, but I haven't gotten anything back from him
awesome.
yet.
Thank you so much.
We'll see what they can do.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? No?
No.
All right.
Thank you.
At this time, I'll accept a motion, that the agenda is complete. I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
I'll second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.